Baratunde Thurston.
What's up, everybody? How y'all doing? My favorite credit is C-SPAN, of course. Massive ratings. It was just a magical place to say all kinds of things. Thank you for having me. I want to just make sure that we are technically set before I get formally started. Bless you. How come no one else blessed you? That's racism. I blame everything on racism. It's fine. How's this going? Nice, nice. Oh yeah, this is like a transparent keynote. You're seeing all the wires get put in place. All right, and audio. That's all right. I present Bond, ladies and gentlemen, Bond. How you doing? With the button-up shirt. Yeah, what's your name? Brian. Brian, everybody say, what's up, Brian? What's up, Brian? What's your story? From the beginning, we got time.
Born in New Jersey.
Uh-huh.
Spent quite a few years there.
All right.
Moved down to Baltimore for college, lived staying here.
Yeah.
And now
Don't mind the alien invasion, this is normal. Keep telling your story. Don't blink your eyes, whatever you do.
yeah, now I can't stop staring at it.
Yeah. This is actually, what this does is it turns you all black. So it's a mind hack that we've been working on at the CIA for quite some time. I spent my formative years there. And very excited to test the technology on you people. And when I say you people, I do mean it in the most offensive possible way, which is horrible, racist way.
Can you try unplugging it and plugging it back in?
Yeah, I could do that. Or I could just leave it there and let the mind trick do. Whoa! That is amazing. Is that a test signal? That's what happens when there's like a nuclear attack. Oh, I think we did it. Let me do one thing. I'm just testing the audio, which is not happening either. There we go. Round of applause, people. Technology. Let's talk about technology and how great it is. What's up, y'all? My name is Baratunde. I am excited to be here. People think that I know Baltimore because I grew up in DC. I don't. It's a whole nother town. It's like saying, oh, you live right next to Canada. How's that going? Like, I don't know. Weird stuff happens up north. I assume they have healthcare in Baltimore. It's like a magical place. I want to give a quick little background on me, and then we'll get into the meat of it. But so by way of more introduction, I helped co-found this black political blog called Jack and Jill Politics. You will notice that our logo is a watermelon. What that symbolizes is intelligent conversation. And if you see any other connection between watermelon and a black political blog, you have terrible issues that need to get sorted out. And I just feel sadly for you. Really, if that's the way you see the world, you should check yourself before you wreck yourself. I hosted a TV show all about the future, so I'm kind of an expert on it. This was a show on Discovery Science Channel called Popular Science's Future of. And what I found out is, yes, there will be black people in the future, at least one, me, and black folk will be required to wear wetsuits. So you should get your orders in as soon as humanly possible. And I've worked for over almost 5 years now at The Onion as the director of digital, which means helping plot how we use platforms to tell our stories in new and interesting and creative, yet also effective ways. And as we were just told by Elliot, I've written a book. It's got a very compelling marketing message, which I just wanted to be really clear about it. It's actually worked. It turned the book into a New York Times bestseller, so Guilt, I highly recommend as a strategy for sales. Really do that. Here's what I want to tell you today. I want to tell you a little bit, basically the story of my life, but it goes before my actual life. This is a shot of my great-grandfather, a dude named Benjamin Lonesome, who was born in the late 1800s in Caroline County, Virginia. Born a slave, taught himself to read, moved to DC in 1896. He worked for the government there. He lived to be 96 years old. And he had 2 daughters, one of whom was my mother's mother, my maternal grandmother, Lorraine Martin, who you see pictured here. In 2005, my own mother died of colon cancer, and my sister and I were going through her files and belongings, and we found letters and newspaper clippings, including this, which revealed that our grandmother was the first black employee at the U.S. Supreme Court building, which we did not know. Massive family history kind of had gone unshared, at least with us, and then we found this commendation shot of her and Jimmy Carter, and she was clearly an accomplished person. This is a long time ago. An accomplishment meant something different for a black woman in the U.S. in the 1930s and 40s and 50s. She was well-traveled. She loved to read. She loved to socialize. She did not always necessarily love raising a daughter full-time. She had a lot of things to do. And so she sent my mother off to boarding school at age 8. And this is my mother at 4 years old. Is everything all right? Oh, no, I'm just making sure. Yeah. I know that there's a better keynote back there. We can watch that. I was just clouded. And again, when I say you people. So anyway, this is my mother. It's my 4-year-old adorable mother. She was sent off to boarding school a few years after this in rural Pennsylvania. It's not rural anymore, but in 1948, it certainly was. Cornwalls Heights, outside of Philadelphia. And she went to a boarding school, Catholic boarding school designed for black people and Native Americans by the Catholic Church to kind of bring them into the family of the Catholic Church. She didn't like it very much. She didn't like it very much. She wrote a letter to her mother, and we found a set of these letters, my sister and I did. So I want to share just one of them with you. It says, "Dear Mother, I am having fun, but I do not like it here. Please send me some cookies and a Sparkle Plenty doll. They can have dolls here. Please send it because I do not have anything to play with. Yours truly, Arnita." So that's an adorable letter. It's actually kind of a sad letter too. Her handwriting is terrible. I don't care if you're 8, you could do better than that, Mom. And then you look at the lower left-hand corner of the letter, you see another word in a shiny, clean font, different hand, it says over. And as you turn that letter over, you get another letter. "If your little girl is dissatisfied, we'd be glad to have her bed for those who are anxious to come. Signed, Sister." Which is very wiretap-y. I don't know what the national security threat was of a little black girl asking for a doll and some cookies, but school was on it. You can't have little girls wanting things. My mom did not stay long at that school, but she did continue for a time in the path of the modern, conformist, acceptable Negro woman, what was allowed for the time. She worked on our high school newspaper as a features editor. She wore dresses below the knee. She carried baskets around for unknown reasons, probably full of love for her country, which loved her back equally. And then something changed. And I would describe it as her social network changing. And she started hanging out with different types of people. She started hanging out with dudes that look like this. This is a guy named El Dorado, like the car. He is the coolest person to ever walk the earth. Some of you think you might be cool, so you think your friends think you're cool. You're not, they're not. This is the last cool dude to ever live. The pants, the shoes, the phone, the fro, even the typewriter and that object in his hands, that newspaper thing, all that's cool. It should all come back. Look at him again. El Dorado. Very, very cool dude. So then my mom starts rolling with even louder crowd, but in a different way. She finds herself caught up actively in the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement. This is on 16th Street out of front of Malcolm X Park, African Liberation Day in the 60s, and there is my mother right in the middle of it, the only one looking right at the camera, because the revolution may be photographed and you want a good shot, you want your hair done up just right. Because your son may talk about you one day, some years later, in front of people in Baltimore. Now, my childhood was greatly affected by my mother's decisions, by her mother's decisions. That's how life works. And given the mother I had, she was super political. She was expressed some controls over my media consumption. I didn't have normal Saturday morning cartoons in my life. I didn't have C-Spot run little pop-up books. This was one of the first books I read as a child called This Is Apartheid. It's a very dramatic thing. It affects a kid's way of dealing with the world. Makes you a little angry militant kid. I'm out on the stoop of my house ranting. We got only eat Cocoa Puffs, my brothers and sisters, all black, everything. Just very interesting for me. This was the view outside of that house. This is the view that actually reminds me of that most popular view of this town, The Wire. Right? That show came out, and it was very good storytelling device, really good writing, but it represented some flashbacks for me, because I was like, I've seen the show before in 3D outside my window. Like before Hollywood was selling 3D, like I had smell-o-vision, the whole thing. It was a highly immersive simulation of that show going on outside my front window. And as I think about my neighborhood and that show, there's so many direct similarities. My neighborhood was just like The Wire. We had the police corruption, we had the drug dealing, we had the murder, we had everything The Wire had, except the universal critical acclaim and the undying love of white people who saw it. We did not have the big DVD sales that The Wire did. But now there's a Target, and the gentrification is moving along, and so it's very popular among people from Iowa now. And this is a shot that sort of represents another stage in that journey. My mother sent me to Sidwell Friends and to Harvard. This is my college graduation shot that my sister Belinda took of us both, representing that family accomplishment of this degree at this institution at this high price, not just financial, but in so many other ways. The thing about that walk from inside that house to just outside to this little town called Cambridge, all along the way, technology played a critical point because of who my mother was. So at this stage, when I was reading This Is Apartheid, I was also playing with the Apple IIe computer. I was playing Dr. J versus Larry Bird and breaking a little backboard. The dude comes out and sweeps it up. I don't know if some of you remember that. Some of you don't even know who Dr. J is because you're young. It's not your fault. It's the way time works. While this was going on outside the window, inside my house, I was playing this game, Mean Streets. I was getting on dial-up bulletin board systems at 2400 baud, 4800, 96, 14.4, 19.2, climbing through those. And throughout this period, the access that Sidwell helped provide to me was we had internet very early on. At Harvard, amazing internet. This is in the early 90s, and even then it was kind of a rare thing. So what flows like water to many communities then was a rare drip back in the day, and it gave me another platform to find and connect to people, and it certainly affected strongly where I ended up doing all these digital things later, and that's kind of where I want to go. Within the whole Jack and Jill politics world, there's one story I want to talk about that I think is really relevant. And blogs are interesting places. People can share their opinions and talk about who's right and who's wrong on the internet. You can have fun flame wars. But the thing that we did in the '08 election that seems significant to me still is the way we were working with our community to kind of expand the way you tell a story. And I'm calling it wikis and streams. There was a period during the campaign where there was a lot of you can't imagine that happening this year, but racialization of the presidential campaign. remember when that happened so long ago? Like, we're well beyond that now. We're post-racial, everything's really dandy in America. But back then, we were less civilized, and we had seen some pattern of campaign behavior, especially out of the Clinton campaign at the time, from some surrogates especially, and we thought we weren't crazy, but we couldn't see everything, we couldn't catch everything, so we built a wiki and asked our community to share what they were seeing in the process and kind of help spot that. And that created this huge database and catalog, generated more media attention. We did a similar thing around voter suppression incidents in the broader general election. Even the way we covered the primaries, we kind of recruited spotters around the country, state by state, to send in their photos and their reports of what was going on. And you got the stories of grandmothers in South Carolina and college kids in New Hampshire, and not everything that we were finding was also being reflected in the larger media that was going on. Even when we went to the DNC in Denver in 2008, someone linked me a Nokia N95 camera to do live stream interviews with people, and we would have our community kind of typing up that showed up on the screen some of the questions they wanted asked of these people. We talked to Van Jones that way, we talked to Gwen Ifill that way. It was a very inexpensive, revolutionary, kind of cool period, which has continued to thrive well beyond anything that we have, are capable of doing just alone. Within the Onion world, I want to focus on some contributions and observations I've had there that relate to the story of innovation. First of all, I've had a storied history there. I've contributed in many ways to this publication. I've been Cooter Obama in this well-remembered moment during the campaign when his hillbilly cousin almost threw everything off the rails. It was a very dark time, no pun intended. I am most black people in the Onion, just so you know, from a photojournalism perspective. I played the president, I played all three Supremes. It's the magic of Photoshop. We've certainly comment on contemporary events in quite a sharp way. Even in moments like these, there is probably something relevant in the Onion catalog for that moment. And of course, this was a very significant moment in the presidential campaign. And I would just like to add, for any remaining supporters of this idiot, he still hasn't produced the papers, right? I'm still waiting for that certification that he's not a festering pile of shit. I don't think it exists. I think he's not being honest with the American people. We deserve a right to know. There's even a way that we have sort of commented on some very controversial things and seen worlds be built beyond that. And I've called this talk world building for a reason. I think now is when you're really starting to see it. So in response to the controversy around Planned Parenthood a year ago, we ran this story saying we're going to spend $8 billion to build an abortionplex in Topeka, Kansas. A few months ago, the story got new life around the Susan G. Komen horrible funding decision, and a member of Congress posted it to his Facebook page saying, see what they want to do? Because he is an idiot. Other idiots empowered him to be an idiot with power. But one of the unforeseen responses and results of this story was what our community went and did with it without any direction from us. Someone took that concept of the abortionplex and put it on Yelp, which is, a business review website. But not just someone, hundreds of someones continued to pile on reviews in the voice of the original story, kind of supporting that alternate reality we had created. So you can see this is the longest one of the most recent nature, and it's got pros and cons going on there. First, anyone else irritated that the Orange Julius was being renovated? There's things about the high percentage of tip that they charge, the rock climbing wall. Yes, this is the largest rock wall in the region. There's complaints about the music selection. This person loves the salsa bar. This person, there's all kinds of people continuing to kind of pile on and play into this world. And then we did a story last fall which got a lot of attention. I want to kind of go a little bit behind the scenes on and thinking about what you can do with the laws of physics and truth in a digital world. We posted this tweet on a weekday morning because we were rolling out a larger story that was more to do with this. The Capitol building was being evacuated, 12 children held hostage by a group of armed congressmen. We added the hashtag Congress hostage. And then we posted an image. Just want to have a multimedia way telling the story. We're kind of rolling out details along the way. Threats to kill all the kids, gun shops reporting that Cantor was spotted, picking up ammunition, just rolling out more and more details as any legitimate news organization would. Then we actually got someone inside the building, and we got this really low quality, and I just want to warn you, there's some troubling images you're about to see.
Nobody move, you're all gonna die! Hey, Boehner, this kid's got a phone.
It's dark stuff, I know. I did warn you though. And then we continue, right, throughout the day, kind of laying more on. This is one of my favorite quotes from the president at that time. I know this Congress well. They will kill these kids. I think he speaks with some authority on the matter, don't you? And then the way we sort of dismounted from the story after all the hubbub was this resolution: hostage negotiation talks stall in Congress. Now this created some ripple effects in the real world. A lot of journalists were taken in by this story and criticized the Onion for going too far and too soon, and don't you know bad things have happened in DC before, and you can't refer to a fake bad thing happening because it makes people sad inside. And so what I like about this reaction is what really happened. That first tweet, we put that out to kind of begin the first layer of the story, and a lot of reporters retweeted it. And they didn't do basic reporting, which is to check your source. And then they got mad because we didn't put like a satire hashtag on it, or like this is a joke hashtag. But then you think, well, it came from the Onion account, and we're not in the habit of reporting actual events. So the context was pretty much set based on who was doing the talking. So this is a draft of a response that our editor was going to be posting publicly. We decided not to, but I want to give you guys a little bit of the inside track. He says, I was thinking that we could say something about how irresponsible it is for the news media to report on something that the news media is reporting on irresponsibly. And that Twitter is ultimately to blame and should start censoring tweets. This just goes to show how dangerous free speech is when in the hands of reporters. Which is a pretty brilliant way of addressing idiots. And not to oversimplify, some of them are very smart, but not in this moment. That was not an intelligent response. One of the things that I've also liked to try to do in my evolving multi-factored life, multi-layered life is public service. I like to try to give back using these digital tools, and the primary way that I found to do that on a recurring basis for the past, I'd say, 3 years, is I take these Twilight movies and I live hate tweet them. And so what that means is when a horrible abomination of the story that essentially proposes and supports stalking and abusive behavior and low self-esteem among girls is getting massive Hollywood funding, I sit in the back of the theater and I post my thoughts on what's happening on the screen. And sometimes, and I think the teachers in this room will really respect and understand where I'm coming from here. I certainly respect you guys even more after this experience. You just want to reach like one person. Like if you could just break through to one kid and like help them up their grade or eat a sandwich or whatever the challenge is. In this case, I've convinced one person not to spend money on this horrible, horrible messaging campaign. And so continue to do this with every release of Terror. Now I want to talk a little bit more about this book that Elliot so graciously introduced, and thank you for that, and what has gone into it and where digital innovations played a role in a very traditional storytelling platform. First of all, in the beginning, the book started and was born on Twitter. It started as a conversation because I wanted to go buy some wine. And there's a certain way you're supposed to buy wine. Like, you're supposed to smell it and swirl it and then feel something in your heart, like a sadness or a sense of joy, but also nutmeg. It's very complicated buying wine. I don't have time for all that. I just wanted a liquid, that had some special tang to it. And so I looked through the shelves. I could have asked for help, but I wasn't feeling like learning that day. And so I decided instead to look for a sign in the labels, and I saw a bottle of wine called Negro Amaro. And I thought, this is perfect. That is a sign for Negroes. That this is a Negro-friendly wine. And wine-friendly, the discerning black sommelier. So I bought it because I'm ignorant, and I went to Harvard. And then, because I'm further ignorant, I shared these thoughts and decisions with Twitter and challenged my friend Elon to a blackness test. To say, look, this is how black I am. It is that important to me. I bought my wine because of the word Negro, and then he responded, I see the subtle racial implications of Thundercats. Panthro is black, shirtless, and Lionel's driver. Which is an excellent point. I hadn't ever thought to see it that way. I was not black enough to see it the way he did, and see how black are you? Challenge. And so we went back and forth and back and forth, and a movement was born. A very fun, silly movement. And I spoke about this as I am speaking to you now at a conference some years ago, and an editor at HarperCollins was in the audience. Oh, you should come in for a meeting. We think you should do a book. Maybe that book should be called How Black Are You? And I said, no, I should not. That is a terrible idea. Because in the confines and context of me and Elon, who I know and trust, going back and forth in not too ignorant a manner, I was comfortable. But the idea of throwing a book out there with that title, I just saw people like watermelons dancing in my head, like it's a little too much. I don't know if I trust America with How Black Are You just yet. But instead, it became How to Be Black, which is a more affirmative statement and not so much a challenge on someone's authenticity, which is the opposite point of the book. In the book, I interviewed a panel of black experts, people who have been black their entire lives. It's hard to find people with such a depth of experience, but I located 6, and one white person as a control group. I'm ultimately a scientist. And I asked them a series of questions. When did you first realize you were black? How black are you? Can you swim? Important questions to identity. And when I did this interviewing process, I traveled around. I did a very fancy 2-camera shoot with my iPhone on this tripod and a Flip Minnow HD on this tripod, and then a Zoom audio recorder in the middle to get a clean channel of audio. So I'm going to use this stuff later. Here's a sample of how that later turned out.
So I came home and I remember I couldn't really move past the entrance of the house, and I needed to talk about the fact that this little girl said that I was black and that I, in fact, found myself to be beige.
I was playing doctor with a bunch of kids, and this one girl, it was her turn to kiss me, and she didn't, and she sort of ran away laughing, and the other kids ran away laughing, and the thing I realized at that point that I was black and they were all white, because this was a small private school in Boston, and that was the first time I remember feeling like black was somehow separate from the norm. I think I knew I was black before then, because as I say in my show, my mom would not have let me not know I was black. There would have been no way that she would have let that information slip. It's cold outside, take a jacket, and you're black.
I was born in Africa, so everybody's black. So we don't really think about it like that. I mean, here you come like, oh, so is he black? Is he white? Is he black? Is he black? Black? In Africa, you don't ask. The assumption is that you're black. Therefore, what becomes more important is other things. What your name is, where do you come from, what language do you speak, what's your culture, what's your tribe, etc. So I didn't know I was black. When I was 8, I moved to the Middle East. I think the Middle East is the first time I discovered I was black. Because people will come up to you and they'll be like, oh, yes.
And what does that translate to?
That means, oh, this is a black guy.
I grew up in East Chinatown in Toronto, so it was made very clear that I was Guaylo from a very early...
Guaylo being...
White ghost. Sort of, you know, I know every derogatory term for a white person in Chinese.
This slide is actually, it doesn't express its importance, but behind the scenes in the book, publicity and outreach and engagement campaign has been some secret sauce. And this slide is part of that sauce. Nodes is an interesting software company based in Brooklyn, founded by a good friend of mine, Ron Williams, who's also a black expert, black his entire life as well. Grew up in Brooklyn, survived a bunch of similar things that are in my bio, and has now got a very hot technology and startup under his belt. What it does is it allows you to find expertise in your existing social networks. So you're connected to all these people online, and you can search for them by where they are, where they live, or where they visit or talk about a lot, what topics they're expert in, or the institutions that they're connected to. You want to find somebody at this school, you might actually be already connected to them, or someone who went there and you don't even know it. So the goal is to be able to approach people on their terms a little bit more and find things that are relevant to them in relation to you, and then hit them up that way. So we have been using this in the background to, as with the video you just saw, we've been asking the public, when did you first realize you were black, how black are you? And so we did a test instead of me just blasting it out to the whole world. Hey everybody, check out me and what I'm doing, and I want you to do something for me. We found like 15 people through this process and hit them up directly, and half of them contributed their own stories because they were already kind of primed and open to the topic. We just had to find that connection that was invisible. So that's going to be a continuing part of the rollout, but I think I love not only the story of what they do, which is bringing more relevance to your networks and making you smarter with the people you already think you sort of know, but also love that the dude that created this company is a black dude from Brooklyn who has been in jail, you know, who's got an amazing bio and is going out there and doing like these really beautiful and amazing things. So just know that. I think it's an important and relatively unspoken part of the story. This screenshot represents my most experimental phase in actually writing the book, and I wish I could have gone to the writing session earlier, but this probably would have been a relevant point, but I'll do it here instead with a microphone. I decided to do an experiment at the suggestion of a friend. His name's Anand Girdharadas. He actually writes as a columnist for the New York Times, and he had sent me an email saying, you should write your book in public using the screen sharing technology called join.me. Not the whole book, but like your last day of writing. Let everybody see what it is. You can do some pre-sales maybe. And I wrote this long email back explaining why that is a terrible idea. And I would never do it, and it violates, it turns writing into performance. And then I did it because I like performing and because I wanted to try it out. So this is what people saw during the editing phase. When I write, it doesn't look like this. I use a very streamlined program called Lightroom with no doodads. I just like text and a blinking cursor. But this is the little later phase, and set the context on the left-hand side with this billboard so you kind of know what's going on, who I am, what this project is. And the software was designed for like tech support. It was designed for people who wanted product demos. So there are features that allow you to ask to control the computer of the person who's sharing their screen. So people would come into the room and they would think that I was like crowdsourcing the book. Like, oh, let me take over, I want to write a chapter. I was like, no, this is still my book. You get to watch. But I'm in a fishbowl. The glass is not permeable. The software also came with a chat room. And people, I had to mute that, but they could still talk to each other as I wrote. And here's some of the highlights of what they said throughout that process. By the way, I called it that live writing, just love hashtags. So this is what the internet is all about. Agreed. Gives me a connection with the author. That makes sense. How self-obsessed does one have to be to set something like this up? The answers vary, by the way. I do love myself, which you should. Just the little I've read here makes me want to buy this book. Excellent. Win. I have an urge to tweet about this. Good. Now you're on my advertising team. It is interesting to see his writing flow. And this, I didn't really think too much about what I was doing before I did it, but I did capture all this conversation and kind of look at it later to see what it meant for people. And this was the most meaningful one because I never thought about it this way. You usually get to see a writer actually write. You kind of see somebody at their laptop off in the corner of a coffee shop, and if you really are able to see them write, you're probably standing too close. And it's rude and kind of awkward for both of you, hopefully. So this was a rare glimpse for another writer to be like, oh, this is how he does things. I'm switching screens to Wikipedia and Google Maps, kind of looking up childhood spots that I sort of remember but had to refresh my visual on. I'm surprised to see Baratunde use semicolons. This is a weird form of punctuation racism. And I would think with like a black president, we could, kind of get beyond this, but apparently not. The struggle continues. And this was definitely the most meaningful comment. My girlfriend is Chinese, and I'm half Jamaican, half regular black. I think our kids might end up Dominican or something. So I love this for so many reasons. There's a lot in that tweetable post. Regular black is an interesting concept. It's got me thinking about like Diet Black and Black Zero. Black Clear, I don't know what that would be. And then end up Dominican or something, right? This mysterious new nationality, ethnicity coming out. So now I want to, on this world tour that I've been taking you through some pieces of my life, I want to actually take you through a bit of a tour of the world. As I have thought about comedy and its connection to digital platforms and ways of articulating things, I've looked abroad where it's riskier to do things like the Congress hostage stunt that we did, where there's much more meaning to it because of the political repression that goes on. Here's a video of some fellow comedians who do a whole show about this, and they're able to do it in part because of the times we live in.
The foundational moments in the Jewish story is that of Abraham smashing his father's idols, right? And what comedians do is they pick apart the world and they smash idols. Satirists take down powerful figures who, tower over the rest of us as these idols. And so comedy is a great way of taking a sledgehammer to the idols and shattering them so that we can all see truth beyond, this imposing figure towering above us.
I need this conversation to happen every time before I go on stage.
Yeah.
I need to open it up. I need to have this on the iPod.
It's going to get our iPod.
The next
Sacred clouds, redemption, sledgehammer truth, smashing idols.
And if you look at Nigeria as an interesting place, they have a satirical publication called Wazobia Report. Here is one of the stories that they ran a little while back. Nigerians have more enemies per capita than any other countries. It's sort of an inside joke on the propensity in that country for people to blame everything on my enemies, whether it's political repression, whether it's disease, whether it's a stomach ache. It's always at the work of your enemies. And you can get a glimpse in the inside view of that society through this window, through a website that they're being able to host this on for very low cost. Nigerians to take course in airplane etiquette before boarding planes, which I was referring to behavior online. And then this much more political one, Nigerian government invents artificial intelligence, name it Reno Omokri, passed off as a real human being. He was the spokesperson for Jonathan Goodluck during his last presidential campaign, and their point was no actual human would ever take that job because you have to defend the indefensible, so they must have manufactured him using advanced technology. The same technology that I used at the beginning of the show to change your race with the flashing lights. Iran is an even more powerful case and more timely, somewhat, given our relationship that's deteriorating with them. There's a show called there you go. There's a show called Parazit. This guy, Saman Arbabi, he is Iranian-born, but he came to the U.S. just before his 13th birthday. After the revolution, there was an age cap when, beyond a certain date, boys 13 or older would not be allowed to leave the country because they'd be compelled for military service. So this is huge flinging of Iranian children across the diaspora to prevent them from being caught up in all this. A lot of them landed in France, and a bunch of them landed here in the U.S. Saman is one of those. He became a reporter. He actually was a ABC News radio reporter. He reported on wars in Afghanistan and Pakistan. But on the side, he was doing this cartoon that picked up some steam. And then he now works at Voice of America out of DC, right down the street, creating the most popular television show in Iran from a very cheap studio with some very smart writing and some good editing. It's called Parazit. And here is a little clip of it. I hope, yeah, the footnotes, the subtitles are large enough to read.
کار 15 گروه و ائتلاف رسما برای حضور در رقابت نفسگیر 12 اسفند آمادگی خودشون رو اعلام کردند.
خب این 15 تا کیا هستن حالا؟
جبهه پایداری انقلاب اسلامی هم که چند ماهی وارد عرصه انتخابات شده، همان حامیان سابق دولت و وزرای قبلی کابینه‌های نهم و دهم هستند. جبهه توحید و عدالت که طرفداران و نزدیکان دولت هستند. جبهه بصیرت و بیداری اسلامی که چند روز از اعلام رسمی اون نمیگذره. این جریان هم به نوعی از حامیان دولت است.
حق انتخاب تو رنگین کمان انتخاباتی این شکلی میتونی از این طرف از طرفداران دولت انتخاب کنی، نخواستی هم میتونی از اون طرف از حامیان دولت.
So he's doing this and he's gotten some really good praise from people that
I just want to tell you, you're like our show, but with real guts, and I'm proud to be considered in the fraternity of humorists that you guys are in.
Can you believe this?
And I'm honored to have you on the show. I'm proud of you. And humbled by you.
Kambiz Hosseini and Salman Arbabi.
The Iranian regime is so threatened by this show that they actually send people to remove satellite dishes off the apartment complexes in Tehran. They get super Mission Impossible SWAT team about stopping people from watching a comedy show. Traffic stops in Tehran when the show is on the air, so everybody goes inside to watch it. There's a bootleg economy for unauthorized DVD prints that people are selling to get the word out, and these two dudes are celebrities in the Persian community. Like they go to some falafel stands, we're like, it's you! And they're doing it from here. You know, they're doing it from here. In the more physical sense, I tour the world a lot. I have a great chance to see a lot of other countries and interact with them in some cases, advise, in all cases, learn and listen. Republic of Georgia is an interesting place, technically at war with Russia, a new democracy still finding its legs, but it's doing some really innovative things with technology to speed up the process of working with the government. You get your licenses really fast. They've made that platform easier, and they're trying to do even more with that. I visited Cameroon last summer and had the honor of accompanying a high-level World Health official as he visited HIV hospitals and clinics. And we saw them using mobile phone technology, not just to play Angry Birds, but to actually ensure that mothers were taking their medication on time to prevent the transfer of HIV from them to their children as they continue to nurse and take care of them. And even I say especially in India, where I spent a few weeks this year, but also sat on the Knight Foundation's Board of Judges for Innovation in Journalism. One of the Knight Foundation does a cool thing, and I'm just kind of wanted to throw this particular point in because I think it's a new way, not a new way, but a more interesting way of thinking about what tech can do. They do a grant that funds sort of journalistic innovation projects, but the way they define it says any project that meets the information needs of a community, which is much broader than thinking about a newspaper. And one of the applications we saw was from, again, another mobile phone technology, which allows villagers to know when the flow of water is coming, so that they would normally have to run up to the hills every day hoping that there'd be water, and now they can get a notification and free up hours and hours of their lives to go to school, to grow food, to raise their kids, to play chess, like whatever else they want to do to enrich their lives is made more possible now because of this app. And it's simple information, it's like the stock price, but it's water, so it's even more important to your survival. That is happening right now around the world. And the world as we know it, underlying all of this are a few theories and principles of change that I think are happening. One is that change is super constant. Like I remember conversations where, when we talked about the music industry and the internet, people would just kind of wish it would go away. It was like, oh, this internet thing, it'll be over soon, right? And we'll get back to selling overpriced CDs again. That's what America's all about. We can do that. It's never going to happen again. I don't even think we're going to reach a new plateau of stability. There's going to be some new feature, some new app, some new device, some new capability based on speed or storage or connectivity that will change again the way we do things. So knowing that, we kind of have to adjust. Creativity is the default setting. And what I mean by this is, we are used to creating, in our long human history, tools to consume information. My great-grandfather's revolutionary act was to learn how to read. And that was an empowering thing. Well, reading is nowhere near enough. And it's actually not even the basic offer. The devices you get now come with publish buttons, come with upload features and image capturing and repeating capabilities built right in. Microphones are handed out almost at birth. What are we going to say with that? And the tools of construction are readily available too. It's not just writing with words, it's writing with code and actually building worlds. Everyone or everything is connected, and that connectivity allows us to discover people like us, people very much not like us, ideas that we thought we were the only ones to have. We find out someone has a better version, and that kind of leads to this observation that those good ideas can come from anywhere. You've kind of seen that happening at the highest levels of the economy. You see the globalization, you see companies outsourcing for a long time, but now you can do it, right? You can find a partner in another country, in another city, in another block to collaboratively help you build that new world. And what I want to stress as I start to wrap this up, these are the facts of the new world. They are becoming the facts of the new world. They're not entirely true. Not everyone is connected. Not everyone can create. But way more than at any point in the history of our species, this is now becoming more and more possible. There's no point in fighting that. How do you embrace it and build a world that is also, to the point of this conference, inclusive? And when you recognize the power that is inherent in these, the inclusivity becomes not only like a nice-to-have diversity initiative, it becomes an essential initiative to reflect what that world actually is. So what does inclusiveness mean? It does mean access. You hear a lot of people, throw computers at kids. Well, don't throw computers at kids. That's violent and dangerous. But providing connectivity, providing devices, that's one element of it. It's not enough. It's providing examples. Providing, whether it's role models or celebrity figures or shows, that there's nothing super popular outside of Zuckerberg and his hoodie that represents, what the new power actually is. And we're still, especially among the browner cohort, we're still celebrating acting, sports, and the presidency, right? We got the presidency, not to be underdone, not to be outdone or undervalued. But there's a lot more in this redistributed power world that's happening that we need to provide examples for, that people can aspire to want to do this. And I think that's as important. Mentorship is a somewhat obvious one, but maybe not enough. I remember doing the Big Brothers Big Sisters program when I was in Boston for several years, and I worked with a teenage Haitian immigrant kid, Giovanni, real cool dude, and I always felt terribly, college. I always felt terribly that I didn't spend enough time with him. We would go out every couple of weeks. I'd take him to shows. He'd hang out with my friends. We'd sit at my apartment, just mostly socializing. And a lot of questions. It wasn't like a lecture series. We were just supposed to spend time and hang out. I met with him some years later when I visited Boston, and he offered to take me out to coffee. I was like, that is not something he would have done, ever. And he picked this cool little coffee shop, and I was like, okay, what is going on here? He showed up, he was dressed a whole different way. He was in college, he had a job, and he had a job in tech. And he actually said, I just wanted to take you out to thank you for showing me a whole nother world. I didn't even know that was possible. I saw your home, and I saw your friends, and I saw what you were doing, and so I wanted to do stuff like that too. And I was like, oh my God, it actually can work. And it may not even take as much of a boot camp mentality as I assumed it would. It may just take more targeted access and socialization in part to kind of get there. I think it also, really to the point of this conference, takes conscious effort. There are a lot of conversations about, let's get more black people in technology. Oh, they're none there. What are we going to do? Let's get more brown people. Let's get more women here. without really trying to do it. And I think the flip side of that conversation is labeling people who don't make that effort as exclusive, as racist, as sexist, which is oversimplifying. I remember working in a company that was a white-collar, lovely business to work in, and they just recruited constantly from the same sources. Like, we're going to recruit from Harvard and MIT and these like liberal New England colleges, and we're going to go to the same career fairs, and it works. We get the people we want, and that's it. There was no exclusionary intent in their strategy. They were just missing a big slice of the world because they wouldn't step outside of that habit that reinforced who and what they already looked like. And it would take a conscious effort to break that subconscious pattern that we build over time. So what I'd really like to see in the way this whole thing is put together is that many people here clearly get that you actually have to try and be even a little uncomfortable in that effort because you're going beyond that zone, that subconscious zone, into a conscious zone of inclusivity. I'd say, and I think this is my last point on this increasingly almost rant, but an environment of possibility. When I look at my own life as it connects to the lives that came before me, one of the great gifts that I had was the time that I was born in and the space that I was born in and the mother, who raised me. Those are obvious factors in my happiness and experimental and pretty successful journey. But the other element that is a little more subtle is this environment of possibility. And I think that started in my home, but it also was amped up when I started going to these schools where people just assumed they could do what they wanted. There was no asking permission. They were just like, I'm gonna run the world. I can do this, I can do that. And that is a subtle but powerful way of looking at opportunity, which is to say, it's mine, and I can. And the whole, some element of yes, we can, and that is really important. And when you marry that, when you marry that idea of, okay, I can do these things, when you marry that with the opportunities and a sort of conscious effort, when you also marry it with these tools that actually allow us to build worlds, that actually allow us to create editorial, economic, comedic, whatever opportunities, it becomes a very powerful match and combination. And if we don't do it, the worlds that are built for us won't reflect the full beauty and benefit and problem-solving needs that this world actually has. So that is my closing remark is actually in the future world Dominican, which I think it's pretty obvious. And I will take questions now about almost anything. I'm not sure if there's a mic passed or standing, so I will, if there is a mic and someone has it.
No mic?
No mic. Okay.
People can just speak up.
But Mr. Hazlitt will help traffic cop if I can't see you, which I think I can because I have the best vantage point. Any questions about anything, about black people, about Dominicans, about comedy? Yes, sir.
I just want to thank you for making me black before that. I really enjoyed the whole time.
Great, great. And how did you feel as a black person?
Colorless. It felt good.
Felt good. Welcome to the family. It does feel good. James Brown said it.
A little clarity on what regular black means. Is there like an irregular black?
There is. Are you being serious? Okay. Walking that fine line, and I was like, I'm not sure if you're trying to help me or if you really need help. Yes. Anyone else? And behind him, yeah.
I would like to. I know this is not a political forum here, but I would like to hear.
All forums are political.
Fair enough. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the Trayvon Martin situation.
Ooh. My thoughts on the Trayvon Martin situation.
Your thoughts as a young black man who could have been him if you were in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah. So I am rocking a hoodie. I've been wearing a hoodie every day. There is a lot of obvious tragedy in that story, and it continues to exist. I think my perspective on it are a couple. I was Trayvon Martin. In many ways, many friends were to some degree or other. Not that they were actually killed by a vigilante neighborhood watch person, but that fear that extra processing power devoted to securing yourself against the irrational insecurities of others is an extra cost of life, right? That is processing time that is not being used to build an app, to love a spouse, to raise a kid, to grow a carrot. I don't know why I chose carrots, but I did. And so that is part of the expense that I don't quite hear being talked about. And there's a lot to say on it, so I'm sure people will have. I had a painful situation that I don't remember, but my sister does, when I was really young. And it was around my father, who I didn't know for long before he was actually killed in a drug deal. But prior to that, he was driving with my sister in DC, and the cops just decided, like, we're gonna beat the shit out of this dude right now. Pulled him over, yanked him out the car, and my sister's maybe 6 years old at this point. She's in the passenger seat. They're wailing on him, throwing him on the windshield, and then they just take him away. And he's gone, and she's sitting there in the car by herself for hours. And there was a woman walking by who saw her and coaxed her and coaxed her and coaxed her to say, little girl, where do you live? Do you know your phone number? Do you know anything? And she was able to get details and contact my mother, who was able to come and pick her up. That terrorism, right, happens and can happen. And it's sometimes, even when it doesn't, the possibility is an extra weight on our society. So that is unfortunate, to say the least. And it is a painful reminder that we have a long way to go.
I actually have a serious question.
Now, see, you've got a weird track record down
I
here.
know. What do you feel, honestly, about the overt racism that's inherent in this presidential campaign?
I don't know what you're talking about. We fixed that in 08. We got a half-black president. We want.
I want full.
You want full? Well played, sir. Yeah, no, look, God. It is one of the more disheartening elements of our era. Like, you take that step forward, you take some steps sideways, you take some steps back, and you hope that overall you're moving the ball sort of down the field. And I think we are, overall as a nation. We've made massive leaps, and we still have ways to go. We're getting there. It's just really slow. And what doesn't help that process, we have a corrosive media environment, right, which rewards extremism. We have a challenge, even in this digital age, of being able to only consume the things that reflect our warped, sometimes, way of seeing the world. And so we can put ourselves in these little bubbles of self-affirmation that say, yeah, you're right, president's a Muslim, you're right. And you can just see that all day, every day. And because you want to believe it, you will seek it out, and it becomes this vicious reinforcing cycle of nonsense that's a part of it. And then you layer on the money in our political situation, the real ability for just some person with an axe to grind to just write a $10 million check to keep Newt Gingrich in the race and to keep Santorum. Like, you're kind of playing a puppetry game with our democracy. It's almost like Coming to America, and everybody just betting $1 in the bathroom and warping the outcomes that are happening. So all that is really frustrating and really depressing. And I hope, and I think we'll get better. We might have to get worse before then. We have to get to even more of a breaking point of ugliness for people to say, let's build better systems that don't reward such extremism. We're gonna have the views, but I think what we've got now is a perverse environment that encourages it politically, audience-wise, and financially because of the way we've set up these microphones.
You highlighted in your presentation your education opportunities and what that did for you. Looking at education today, if you could reimagine some aspect of it or reshape it in some way, just dream, what would that be?
Wow, small question. So there are amazing answers to that question that I don't have, because there are people who think about it even more intelligently and much more time than I do. What I would say as principles is, education is still designed around some really outdated facts. Right? When I talk about these emerging facts, the world didn't build for these new facts. We're not an agricultural society anymore. We're not a rote memorization society. We're not an industrial society. Certainly our future is less so. And so education should reflect some of those new principles of the world, a collaborative, project-based, constructive way of doing things. Let's get a team of people and you have an assignment to build something, to write something, to create something. And in that process, learn the things you need, both technically as well as socially, about how to get that done. This is a world where no one can do everything alone, and the expertise is much more distributed, and we have to acknowledge that, and I'd say not acknowledge it, embrace it, and sort of enjoy it. So an educational system, I'm not saying a school system, but an overall educational system that allows for that and promotes that is essential. What I see happening in education that is a good sign, I think, when you look at platforms like Skillshare, for example, which is a website which allows for anyone to teach a class in an offline setting. You come up with the topic, the title, the venue, you post it online, and people can sign up, and they rate you, and you have waiting lists for your classes. We're doing more of that peer-to-peer thing. We're realizing that expertise can lie in multiple places, and that is one example of a system which does it. How do we scale a model like that to many more, so that we can all kind of teach and learn from each other in dramatic ways? Oh, and it's a very specific thing. Probably every school should have like a MakerBot thing. Just like that could just be a good national initiative that we could probably afford it because we afford all kinds of other things that are maybe less important. Yes. Hello, Ms. Road.
My question is about the comedy.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me because up in Canada we have that saying with Rick Mercer and this hour is 22 minutes and this sardonic way around politics that teases out like the Onion does, like Dumpster, like the other examples that you gave.
Yeah.
But it really is only understood by the educated class, which is almost like preaching to the choir. Do you have any sense of a strategy, maybe even through comedy, maybe through a lower sort of intelligent form of comedy that could start to bring around the undereducated that are being pulled in by somebody else? We should be comedy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, what a question. So on preaching to the choir, not necessarily a bad thing. Choirs get out of tune, and rehearsal's a good thing. You got the big show, and you're ready. The robes are flowing. So that's one small note. I think there will be more. Someone asked me a question at a conference, and I think it relates to what you just asked. It was a twist on it, which you didn't add. I'm not ascribing this to you, but he said, shouldn't the Onion let more people write? Right? You should have more people in? And I was like, well, maybe, but that's a weird question to ask in this day when you can set up your own website and do you. So the different way of thinking about what you just asked is, are we seeing more forms of comedy emerge from sectors that are less pyramidal in their process? It's like, oh, I want to get on SNL and I want to get on The Office and are there other voices that are emerging? And I have seen some. I've seen a bunch. Issa Rae's Awkward Black Girl show on YouTube is hilarious and different. I don't know if it's still a pretty educated concept. She works in a certain type of office. Her humor is a certain sort of way. There's Deshaun Raw, who does parody rap battles, has a series on YouTube, which are hilarious and aimed very young and very hip-hop and very urban. And I don't think The Onion would ever do anything like that because it's coming from these kids. So I hope that the capabilities that are around will encourage that a bit more. And I think there are different ways to reach people. There's a whole spectrum, and there may be something in Onion-style comedy, but those references are just premised on a certain type of socialization and a certain type of education. And so what emerges from voices that have a different background is going to look a little different, though not necessarily be less intelligent. So the goal may be different, and what that positive result looks like may not be more onions at different levels or more daily shows. It may be some other version that's still doing a very intelligent comedic thing to report the truth, which stand-up comics have been doing for a long time. Chris Rock does it, Red Fox did it, and that's I think that's what I think about that. Yeah, thank you. Very cool question. All right, and
Actually, I want to ask a question.
oh, yeah, okay.
You talked about
No, you're not allowed. But I didn't put the conference together when I asked a question.
Well, I'm going to seize that power. You talked about conscious efforts
Yes.
to promote inclusion, of which this is one. And what I wonder, however, is that the more conscious, the more explicit the effort is about inclusion, the less attractive it is to those who already feel included. What's in it for the majority, the incumbents, the people who don't think of themselves as having a problem? What's in it for them to become more conscious? And how do we pierce that bubble?
By poking it. What's in it is relevance, is an increased size of an addressable market for goods and services, is new and probably better ideas. There's an assumption by many in that community, and sometimes I'm in that community, depending on what room I'm in and what room I'm not in, that this is as good as it gets, right? We're doing great, and you want to come mess it up by bringing in your ladies and your coloreds, right? And your irregular blacks. And diversity initiatives are seen as some sort of charity. It's like, oh, we're going to help these people out by giving them access to our thing. Your thing is already suboptimal. Your thing has massive blind spots in its creativity, in its staffing levels, in its outreach, and I think there's a way, without being so aggressive, and it depends, aggression is helpful too. I think there's a spectrum of ways to approach this. But we got to understand that, and I heard this in a session earlier, the world's not going to wait for you to feel threatened. Like, shit's happening in India, it's happening in Georgia, it's happening in Cameroon, and other people are less hung up on themselves and are just getting it done. So if you want to maintain any kind of edge, and I think there's somewhat of a nationalistic play possibly, and a patriotic play on the American side of this, we got resources, we've got ideas, we got perspectives that are completely untapped. And you wouldn't, if you're thinking on a natural resource basis, go see a bunch of gold over there, be like, nah, I don't want to include gold. What's that gold going to do for a mine over here or a river that you could, why would you do that? So why would you leave an opportunity that's already here? Like, you don't have to go anywhere to get it. It's probably sitting next to you on the bus if you take the bus, or it's in the bus next to your car. Right? And by it, I mean people. I don't mean to reduce folks to just objects. So I think that's a part of it. And I think even within, you reminded me of a point that I wanted to make earlier, which is related, but it's not about kind of majority-minority split. It's kind of within all perceived minorities or outsiders, the need to collaborate more as well. And I asked Kamau, who you saw with the headphones doing the Sacred Clowns dance, I asked him, and everyone, what do you want for the future of kind of race and blackness in America? And he said he wanted everybody to work for the group one over from them. He said, black people should have to work for the immigrant rights community, and they should have to work for women's rights, and they should have to work for LGBT issues, and so on and so forth. And you can't solve racism and make sexism worse. You can't solve sexism and make homophobia worse. You have to put it all forward together. So even within this bubble of inclusion, there is a way of being inclusive that is necessary to do the best job, to not leave resources and ideas and profits and opportunity and happiness sitting right there on the table. Appeal somewhat to greed, somewhat. That was dramatic.